my son was born last year in May, and he actually had a very rare metabolic condition. So it was a mitochondrial condition, but it wasn't inherited, like in the case of Charlie Gard's. We've since found out it was what they call a mitochondrial gene mutation. So it happened at the time of conception. So, they don't really know sort of why it happened. They can't really give us chances as to why it happened. But our son lived for 3 days, and we were in a similar situation in as much that he was on life support, and they had to withdraw life support after 3 days. And I wouldn't say it was a decision that we had to make, if that makes any sense at all. It was merely a case of, that he has the condition, the damage that's been done is irreversible. You have to let them go.
Obviously, you only had 3 days to come to terms with this, which must have been, I can't imagine how awful that must have been for you over those 3 days. So was it a case of where you just thought you had to take the medical advice, or was there part of you saying, well, no, we actually want to wait a bit longer?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? We were sat there for 3 days, and I have to say, I felt like I was in a bubble. I felt like in some ways time was going too quickly. Time was just running away with me. And in other ways it was going so slowly. And you didn't have any idea as to what was going on in the outside world. And that was 3 days. And I cannot imagine what that must feel like for 6 months. I feel like you must get so wrapped up in what's going on that actually you do start to think that maybe a child that is very, very unwell, there's a glimmer of hope, and you think they're going to get better. I have to say, for the 3 days that we were looking after Teddy, we were, obviously, like any parent would, sort of willing him back to life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, on the day that they told us that there was nothing that they could do, I had six doctors, six paediatricians sitting in front of us who, were all looking at us. You could see that they were so emotionally invested in it. They desperately wanted to tell us that, that wasn't the case and that he would be okay, but they couldn't say that. And I can remember asking one question, and the question that I asked was, is the damage that's been done irreversible? And they said yes. And that to me was not a choice. It was a kind thing to do.
Yeah. And how did you spend those 3 days?
We were with him the entire time, with the 3 days that he was poorly, and on the final day when they told us that they would, we would have to let him go, we found out in the afternoon, and they eventually withdrew life support that evening. So we had, hours with him where we knew that was it. And we were able to, finally hold him. And, my parents were there, my husband's parents were there. We sort of, they took lovely handprints and footprints and casts of his hands. And, we got to do all the things that you want to do for a child, feed them and change them and do all the things that I guess we were trying to sort of cram a lifetime's worth of things into an afternoon. I have to say the doctors that looked after us at St Peter's NICU unit in Chertsey, Ashford and St Peter's Hospital, were incredible. And I know in my absolute heart that they would have done anything to not have to have said those words to me, that there was nothing they could do for him. But unfortunately, with metabolic conditions and with mitochondrial conditions, there are so many rare ones that we don't know about. My son's was so rare. I think there'd never been a case of it recorded in the UK, and they could only find a handful recorded worldwide. So there's not going to be a cure, not maybe not in our lifetime.
And I guess
hopefully one day. And
I guess when you find that out, the natural thing to think is, well, why on earth has this happened to us? Why are we the ones?
Yeah, and that is a question that rises so often in my mind. I think medical science is wonderful in some ways because it enables us to find out why it's happened. So that at least they can give me an answer. They can tell me what he had. They can pin it down to being this hugely rare condition. But then, when a genetic specialist does a screening on, all of my genetics, all of my husband's, and says, well, neither of you carry anything, we really can't understand why this happened. It was chance, it was fate, it was bad luck. And that is a question that, very much does play on your mind. I have to tell you, you think, well, it could have happened. It could have happened to anybody, but it had to happen to us.
And another difficult question coming up, Elle.
It's okay.
How do you decide whether you're going to have another child?
Do you know what? Trying to conceive, I think, after loss is a really big, difficult thing to think about. Anyway, I've made many friends in the last year who have lost children through death during childbirth, stillbirth, neonatal death like Teddy, and I don't know. It's very different. I can't speak for every woman who's lost a child, obviously, because I think everyone's reaction is very different. But for me, I felt like it was more of an instinct as opposed to an emotion, a feeling. I didn't consciously say, "Oh, right, I want to have another baby," but I felt, I guess, your hormones and everything take over when you've had a full-term pregnancy and you don't have a baby to hold. You feel like you should have a baby to hold. So your instinct kind of takes over and tells you that you should just try again. That's what you should do.
Well, Elle, it's been an amazing call. I'm so grateful that you phoned in. You've had a huge effect on people on social media. I've got to read this one out to you. Steve says, this is so moving. Bald-headed, bearded, hairy-arsed biker in bits here. And I think he speaks for everyone. Elle, thank you very much indeed.